So as a Boko Haram, how many people did you kill, you think? Do not answer.
This man say he killed like 100 people.
100 people. What was your age when you started?
10 years.
10 years.
The elder they give instruction to kill.
So this guy, he killed more than 100 people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that boy that's claimed to kill 100 people looks like he's 17, 18, 19 years old. And for him to have started that at 10 years old opens up so many questions about the environment he grew up in, the violence around him, and the circumstances that could create such a monster. Any way you look at it, it's a tragedy. He's probably living in severe internal pain, suffering, putting on a hard demeanor in order to survive the environment by which he's grown up in. But another perspective is to understand that he is not just a problem. He is a product. And in this video, I'm going to show you the factory that made him. I'm going to break down so that you understand why the West cannot afford to fix the situation, why its prosperity literally depends on Africans staying broken just like him, and why that boy is not just a tragedy, but an actual line item in the game of global geopolitics. So let's start with the rule the entire global Western economy runs on, but not one the West will say out loud. And that is, for there to be winners on the scale of London, Paris, New York, there must be losers on the scale of the entire global South, and for the purposes of this video, the continent of Africa. The Western standard of living is not a reward for Western productivity, although productivity does play its part. It is the price of someone else's collapse. And that collapse has been continuous and manageable and far enough away so that nobody in those Western countries has to look at it with any type of deep scrutiny. The systems that produce a 17, 18-year-old boy with 100 bodies is the same system that produces cheap fuel for Berlin, low interest rates in London, and fully stocked supermarket shelves with all the abundance of everything anyone could ever want and more. Africa is not poor by accident. Africa is poor by design, because the designers require someone to be poor, and Africa was assigned the role. There are all sorts of things I could point at to prove it. And in fact, my channel is a documented breakdown of this at a higher level if you look at all the subjects on my channel. But I want to actually focus on the machinery and the process of how we get to where we are right now in the continent of Africa. Listen to this lady from Nigeria speak.
Countries don't collapse overnight. They decline gradually while people are still arguing. You know, the scary thing about Nigeria right now is not just what is happening. It is how quickly we get used to it. Every week, a new headline. Every week, a new location. And every week, everyone still moves on like it is normal. But nothing about this is normal. This is not just one attack. This is not just Joss. This is not a northern thing. This is a pattern. And before some of you say I'm just exaggerating, go and study other countries that have faced insurgency. Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Pakistan, Mali. These places did not wake up one day and become unstable. It started small. Repeated attacks like ours, weak response like our government is still doing. People get used to it, then it spread. If you study different countries around the world that have faced insurgency and terrorism, you will notice a pattern, which is it starts small. This is not about their state, your state, or our state. This is about a system that is being tested gradually. Today it is happening somewhere else. Tomorrow it could be closer. And one day it could be you watching your own location trend.
So she's describing the maintenance schedule of the machine. Small enough attacks here and there, frequent enough that the territory stays unstable, and predictable enough that nobody with the power to stop it ever feels enough urgency to actually act. And for the country of Nigeria, things are spreading beyond a scale that many thought was possible. Now, this is just an example, but I'm going to break it down continent-wide as we move through the video. Just stay with me. I just want to take a quick moment to thank everybody that has subscribed to my Substack. I really appreciate the support. If you're out there and you want to support this message of African sovereignty, then I highly recommend that you head over there as well. On a platform like YouTube, a message like this can be shadow banned. I could even be deplatformed. It's happened to others in this space already. But if you subscribe to my newsletter, it means that you and I can have a direct dialogue via email without any intermediary that may want to censor this message. There is a paid tier if you want to support financially. That's about the cost of a coffee each month. But if you don't want to do that, there's a free tier. And so even if it's just for the purposes of keeping this message alive, you can go and subscribe totally for free. The link is in the description right now, and I look forward to connecting with you via email directly real soon. Something that started 16, 18 years ago in northern Nigeria with the Bring Back Our Girls campaign from Michelle Obama has now spread so far south, it's now in Kwara State. For those people that don't know, Kwara State is my home state. It's where my father was born. It's in the middle of Nigeria. It's not in the north. So decades of insurgencies has caused this problem to spread further and further south. It seems like we've been talking about this for a long time now, and we are seeing tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. But the proof that this seemingly sort of rogue gang of people, Boko Haram, Jainim, who live in the bushes, is actually an industrial-backed system, is what I'm aiming to try and connect the dots and expose here. At the beginning of March 2026, this month, ISWAP launched coordinated, simultaneous attacks on 4 Nigerian Army bases. They killed a number of soldiers and high-ranking commanders, all in one night, in multiple locations. We're talking about hundreds of people using rocket-propelled grenades, anti-aircraft machine guns, and drones. Africa manufactures none of these weapons, which means somebody outside Africa is supplying them these weapons. And that supply has continued uninterrupted for the last 16 years. The same Sahel networks of terrorists that we can trace right back to Libya and Gaddafi's removal, something I speak about on this channel, even on the last video I made, are now participating in massive coordinated attacks in Nigeria. And not just Nigeria, across the Sahel, the epicenter of Africa's biggest sovereignty movement right now. This is the same architecture I've exposed, funding the RSF genocide in Sudan through the United Arab Emirates, is now arming the men all over the Sahel and northern Nigeria. There are now 6 brand names that people hear: Boko Haram, ISWAP, Lakurawa, Jainim, ISGS, and the RSF. And what do they all have in common? They have one beneficiary: the Western hegemony. Now, the question the title of this video forces is, how does America or the West actually manufacture this situation? And the most honest answer comes from an unlikely source: the president of El Salvador. Let's check it out right now.
Every state is stronger than the criminal groups present in its territory. There is no state that cannot defeat criminals. If a state does not overcome criminality, it is because the state is complicit, or because parts of the state are complicit. Once the state frees itself from complicity with crime and goes forcefully after the criminals, it defeats them.
Did you guys hear that? The state is stronger than the criminals that exist in the state. And if the state is not applying full force on the criminals, it is because they are complicit in the criminality happening in the state. So the issue of terrorism in Nigeria is still thriving because, you know, we all know.
So Bukele, the president of El Salvador right here, in my opinion, is right. And you have to apply this logic at multiple levels. At the local level, ask why the Nigerian state cannot defeat groups it has been fighting for 16 years. And the answer might lead you to the man straight at the top of the hierarchy, President Bola Tinubu, the subject of a 1993 United States federal investigation by the DEA, FBI, and IRS into the Chicago heroin trafficking and money laundering ring. He had to forfeit $460,000 to the United States government, according to court documents described as proceeds of narcotic trafficking. Somehow the case was quietly settled, the money was returned to him, and he was set free to return back to Nigeria, where he suddenly emerged as the #1 candidate for Nigerians' prime position, after going through something that would disqualify anyone from presidential running in most countries. This doesn't seem like a man with a past. It seems like a man with a handler. As ECOWAS chairman in 2023, this is the man who pushed the hardest for Nigerian-led military invasion of Niger to reverse the coup that had just expelled French and American forces from the Sahel region. In December 2025, this is the man who authorized United States Navy warships to fire Tomahawk cruise missiles into Sokoto State, making Nigeria the launch pad for the first US military strikes inside the country of Nigeria in the War on Terror era, something that's unprecedented. This is the same man who sent Nigerian fighter jets and ground troops into Benin to crush a coup attempt against a Western-aligned government in an operation analysts say was coordinated in France. This is the same man who sits across from Prince Charles just a few weeks ago and puts Nigeria into massive debt, buying steel from the United Kingdom for the same price or cheaper than what restarting Nigeria's own steel industry would cost, saddling Nigeria with massive foreign debt. If you watch what's going on, the pattern is not subtle. Every major decision of his presidency has aligned Nigeria more tightly with the West and more violently against the African sovereignty movement the Sahel states are currently leading. So the question is no longer whether the Nigerian state is complicit in its own destabilization, something that my family believes back in Nigeria. But the question is whether Nigeria is now functionally a vassal state, a country whose president was vetted, protected, and cultivated by the same powers that benefit from the chaos his government refuses to end. And if the answer to that question is yes, then everything Bukele said becomes literal. And the state isn't failing to defeat its criminals. The state is the criminal's insurance policy. But Tinubu does not explain the whole picture, because the same pattern is running across the entire continent, which means we have to look at this from an even higher level, a global level, and ask why the system as a whole protects this arrangement. The answer is what the West is actually addicted to. And you cannot understand this video's title without understanding this. The West is living on debts. They run on debt. And debt is denominated in dollars. And the dollar's global power runs through the petrodollar system. It is what the Iran war is all about right now. And the petrodollar system requires collateral. And the collateral is whatever can be extracted from the global south at the cheapest price possible, whether the people like it or not. A stable Africa breaks that arrangement instantly. Niger's uranium, for example, being sold at global rates, not being sold at some special lower rate because France has their foot on the neck of the leadership there. Sudan's gold could flow through Khartoum instead of flowing through Dubai. Burkina Faso's mines would be renegotiated, and the $80 billion a year Africa spends importing food would flip into food sovereignty and continental trade surplus. Every single one of those changes held sustainably would force the West standard of living to contract. And no Western government has ever been elected on a platform of making its citizens poorer for the sake of justice somewhere else, particularly Africa. So what happens? Despite nice speaking on the podiums and friendly talk from this president or that, or maybe not so friendly talk from someone like Donald Trump, the machine cannot be stopped. And the citizens of the West are kept comfortable enough not to notice it's running, because the entire arrangement depends on their distraction more than it depends on their consent. They may see headlines, they may feel bad when they see a genocide in Sudan or people dying in Congo, but after a moment or two, they just scroll past it. And I'm not blaming them. I firmly hold the blame on the leadership and the ones that maintain the system. There is nobody in their streets dying, not in the way there are in a place like Kwara State, where the attack happened last week. There is no smoke in the air from bombs. There is no funeral or family in desperate circumstances. And the distance between the supermarket and the supply chain is exactly the distance the system needs them to survive. And that brings me to the part of the machine the West has worked hardest to keep out of view, because it is proof that the machine never actually stops. It may change its branding or its play, but it keeps going regardless.
It's possible that I wasn't clear. It's also possible that, social media and people read what they want to read. So let me make this abundantly clear. Black Africans are bought and sold by the millions today by jihadists, by Arab Islamists today. Over 2 million Black Africans just in North Africa alone are bought and sold for as cheap as $200. This is called the trans-Saharan slave trade. It started in the 7th century when the Arabs began their conquest across North Africa, and it has not stopped. This is not a slavery that happened. It's a slavery that is happening. And the fact that the United Nations will make a big deal to draft a resolution about a slavery that ended almost 2 centuries ago, but still hasn't said anything about the current slave trade that's happening right now today as I speak to you, That is the height of hypocrisy. That's a dog and pony show. They are running cover for slavery, for modern day slavery.
The same UN Security Council that protects the UAE supplying the RSF in Sudan is the same body that won't act on slave trade happening today. And the same Western alliances that abstained on voting for slavery at the UN Council, something I covered a couple of videos back, are running cover for every link in this chain. Child soldiers, slaves, refugees, displaced villagers, ethnic cleansing victims, shortened lifespans, vassal presidents, and rigged commodity prices, different products, same factory, same buyer, same address. The boy in the first clip is a tragedy, and you could say it's Africa's failure, but I don't really think it is. He is the system's success. He was 10 years old when this started for him, and he was only ever given one door to walk through because the people who could have built him a different door needed him to walk through that door of murder, death, and destruction. The West does not need to hate Africans to do this. It just needs to keep eating. And the meals it is eating are the conditions described in every clip you just watched. There is no version of the current Western standard of living that survives African sovereignty. And there is no version of African sovereignty that survives without dismantling that machine, which is why the machine is continuously protected by basically every Western government. The only thing that has ever broken a system like this is the people inside of it. People saying enough is enough. People deciding to change. Leaders not being tolerated who do not act in the best interests of the people. The Alliance of Sahel States are trying to do that right now. This video is my attempt to shine a light on this. There are glimmers of hope with the South Africa's case in the ICJ. Whether anything will happen with that, I don't know. But some people try to push back. It seems like the world has never been more dangerous than it has been right now. And in my opinion, that is because the West's hegemony is starting to decline. Donald Trump is the emergence of that decline. And what he's doing right now in Iran will expedite that decline. It is for us, everyday people out there, to determine the future that we want to see. Live the future we want to see. Act in unity in the continent of Africa towards our brothers, our cousins, our people who look like us, who come from similar backgrounds, whether they are direct descendants or not. Put aside tribal differences, unify, create a singular economic bloc in which to trade from, and keep shining a light on the corruption and problems that the West is causing in the continent of Africa. In the video I made yesterday, I talk about the next target that the West are setting up right now. So if you're interested in understanding more about who that is and how they're doing it, I recommend you watch the video you're seeing on the screen right now. I'll catch you over there next. Peace.